from $0 to $175,000 as a front-end developer. In this video, I'm going to cover the exact roadmap, step by step, exactly how you can get there. I will share exactly what I did, how I would do it differently this year in 2025. And if you watch until the end of the video, I'll actually include a free bonus for you that you can get at the end. Okay, so without further ado, I know your time is valuable, so let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Jake, and I am an ex-Amazon engineer. And so before we talk about the money, before we talk about what I'm doing today, let's just go ahead and talk about the roadmap. So if you're trying to break into tech, if you're trying to switch careers and get into tech, you'll know exactly what you can do, what your path will look like, and how you can actually break into tech as quickly as possible. All right. So my first role as a front-end developer, or really just in tech in general, I was an IT intern making $15 an hour. And at the time I was kind of blown away with this. I thought that was a lot of money, or at least it was a lot of money to me at the time. All right. So I was maybe 18 or 19 years old. That was more money than I had ever made in my life. And this was quite a great life for me. Okay. And at this internship, I did a couple things. I was mostly just scripting Python, basically helped make the business more efficient. Okay. Let's erase that there. It looks kind of ugly. Make the business more efficient. So I was automating things like sending remittance advices. Basically, when a business pays invoices or they send an invoice to a company, they to let the other company know like, hey, we just paid this, or hey, you owe us this bill. All right. And so I helped automate a couple processes like that where they're having a human manually do it. And it was obviously costing time and money. So I wrote a script to basically automate that for them. Okay. So very basic T intern. I wasn't even a software engineer technically. Okay. But this was the first role that kind of brought me in. Right. So over here, I was writing Python code. Okay. And moving on, that was just 3 months of experience. Okay. So I was just an intern at the time. That experience helped me land the next job at a bank. Okay, I was earning $32 an hour. And here I was actually a software engineer intern. If you're breaking into the industry, odds are you're looking at these junior roles, these internship roles, and sometimes they can start kind of small, but they work their way up very quickly. And as you can see here, with just 3 months experience, we had doubled our salary, right? So at this point, with only 3 months experience, you're earning, this is the equivalent of 64 grand a year. If you're thinking about getting into this industry with a few dedicated months of learning, really just some weeks of learning, you can start to get your income up. You can definitely start to get your income up, all right? So, if you're earning $30,000 a year, if you're earning $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year, this is the money you're leaving on the table by not just dedicating a few weeks, a few months of your time to breaking into the industry. So if you're thinking about making the jump, I'd strongly consider how quickly you can progress into this industry. All right. And so at this internship, I was writing some React code, so mostly front end here. And this is kind of, how I started getting into front end development. I didn't have that much knowledge outside of school. I didn't have that much knowledge outside of kind of what I picked up on the job. I was very junior. I was very green at this time. I kind of learned everything on the job. I could solve problems, and I was very receptive to mentorship and people that were, engineers that were better than me, more progressed than me. And I learned that way, right? So on this job, I was writing React code, some basic HTML and CSS, and JavaScript. So basically the fundamentals of front-end development, all right? You're never going to be able to get away from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? So I'll talk about those more here in a little while about, what I did, what I do differently as far as what to actually learn to break into the industry. But this is what I was doing at this role. And this was at a bank here. And after 3 months, earning $64,000. And then came the big boy, right? So this was 5 months experience, right? So at this time, this was 5 months experience. So I had 8 months experience at the time. And at this point, I was able to land an Amazon internship where I was making $60 an hour, roughly. I don't even remember the exact number nowadays because it was so long ago, but I was earning $60 an hour, right? So look at this. I mean, 3 months, 5 months, this is 8 months total. And all of a sudden I was making $120,000, the equivalent of $120,000. Okay. So, I mean, just think about that. What would you do? What other career can you get into where you have 8 months experience and all of a sudden you're earning 6 figures? I mean, I don't even think I was 21 years old at the time. And all of a sudden I was seeing money that's a kid that young, you don't even know what to do with it, right? You don't even know how to spend it. You don't have, crazy real world obligations or bills yet, besides basic living expenses. That was truly life changing. And kind of from this point on, at this point in my life, I didn't really have to worry about money. I had this freedom. I could, eat out at fancy fine establishments like Chipotle. I didn't know any better at the time, right? But I could get double chicken. I could get double steak and not even have to worry about it. It wasn't even a big deal, right? So this was at Amazon. And at Amazon, I was writing a lot of Python code. And that's because I was was setting up a microservice for them. Okay. And if you don't know what a microservice is, don't worry about it. If you're just learning about this industry and you're hearing all these buzzwords thrown around, microservice this, front end this, back end this, just ignore it. I didn't know what it was going into the job. I learned on the job. And that is a common theme kind of throughout my career and throughout my life is, I get in a new job and I learn very quickly on the job. That could be you too. You don't have to know everything going into whatever role it is, right? So as an engineer, as a front end developer, even if you're switching in later in your career, you're not expected to know everything. You're expected to be a problem solver. You're an engineer. You are a problem solver, which means, you should feel comfortable saying, you know what? I don't know, but I can break this problem down. I can solve it piece by piece by piece, and I can do that systematically. It's not going to be a problem, right? I know I will get sometimes stuck on different problems, but I will work through them. I will solve them. All right. It's because I'm a problem solver. I'm an engineer. That is kind of the mentality that you're going to have to adopt if you're switching into this industry. All right. So after just 8 months, I was making, $120,000 here. So they ended up giving me a return offer where the package was essentially 150 grand a year, give or take a few thousand. I can't remember the exact number, but at this point, it's like, this should kind of paint the picture of what's possible. The next role is here, 127. I was making about 140, and then I was at 160. And nowadays I'm making around 175. And excuse my poor handwriting here. I'm just trying to paint the picture, right? So this is like 8 months experience, 11 months experience at this point. And that's what I was making. It's like, the numbers get very large very quickly, right? So if you are in college, this is more money than you'll ever need. You don't have anybody to support besides maybe your parents or a loved one or what have you, right? It's incredible. And even if you are an adult, you're thinking about switching careers and you have money or you got people that depend on you, you need to make money basically to afford whatever lifestyle it is you want to afford. These are the type of numbers you can see very quickly, right? If you put your mind to this, all right? So I find this very motivating. And, if this is something you're thinking about doing, this is how the numbers can work out for you. Okay. So in these roles right here, I was doing a variety of different front end things. So, I wrote the common HTML, CSS, that'll never go away. I worked with a couple different JavaScript frameworks, mainly a Vue framework and a React framework. Okay. So, if you're thinking about getting into front end development, React is by far the most popular front end framework nowadays. It seems like every new startup coming up, they want to use React, which I'll talk about here in a second about what I'd actually learn if I was trying to break into tech. That is kind of the path that got me to where I'm at today. All right. So that is the roadmap step by step of how I worked up to $170,000 as a dude in his 20s living in a big city without being the most smart guy in the world, without going to, Harvard or a Stanford. I just went to a normal state school and, I was a decent student. But, if you're thinking about breaking into this industry, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to get the degree. It's like, if you actually learn the basic skills, the fundamental skills that it takes to be an engineer, you don't need the 4-year amazing school, right? You just got to learn these basic skills, which had I known this in hindsight, I don't even know if I would have went to college, right? The actual skills that I need to do my job as an engineer, I probably could have learned in the course of a few weeks, if not a couple months. I'm not going to make it sound like engineering is easy, that literally anybody in the world can do it, but it is far fewer skills and it is easier than a lot of engineers would have you believe, all right? So, if you're learning to code right now and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't go to the #1 school in the world and like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm smart enough. Believe me when I say that a lot of engineers out there love to make engineering or coding or whatever, make it sound so much more complicated than it is. All right. In reality, if you're going to be a front-end engineer, you need to know a few things. All right. You need to know HTML, you need to know CSS, and you need to know JavaScript, right? So that's the roadmap here. Let's talk about what I did in terms of learning, and then I'll talk about what I'd actually do differently if I was starting today. When I was learning, I actually kind of took a roundabout path, and had I known, I would have actually done things quite a bit differently, right? So my coding career kind of started in high school, where I learned HTML and CSS. I had a basic web development course. That was actually a pretty good start, right? I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know I was going to be an engineer. I didn't know I wanted to code full time. I didn't know if this was for me or whatever, but that was a pretty good start, right? So I started with HTML and CSS. Following that, I was in college, right? So in college, I had a variety of different courses, many of which ended up being useful, but most of them, weren't directly applicable to the job. And, if you're just trying to shortcut the path into the industry, like you don't need a lot of this stuff, right? So in college, I basically had a coding 101 class. So this was in coding 101. Essentially, this was taught in Python. All right. So I learned Python, and it's, everybody says like, Python's an easy language to learn and this and that. And yes, that is true. It will help you understand the patterns of coding, conditionals, branching, for loops, while loops, whatever, file input, output, some of the kind of common patterns that you're going to see if you start engineering or you start coding. So that was a good, I guess, brief of a class. And then I had OOP, which is object-oriented programming. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. You don't need to know what that is immediately. And then I had like a data structures and algorithms that was also in Java. In hindsight, the Java stuff was good because it taught me some fundamentals, some underlying technology of like how different data structures work, the fundamentals of algorithms and why they matter and time complexity and things like that. But ultimately, just to do the job of a web developer, you don't need all this stuff. You truly don't need all this stuff, right? So once I did all this, I had an algorithms class that was mostly just math. I had different math classes and stuff, but like truly, I went to a 4-year computer science degree. I did not do that much coding in school. And so actually what helped me the most was I took a Node.js course outside of school, right? I paid for it myself. I took the course outside of school. That right there got me more job opportunities than I knew what to do with, right? That is what helped me land an internship at a bank. That is what helped me land in my first role out of school. That is what helped me level up as an engineer and start making what it is I'm making today. All right, it's that simple Node.js course that taught me the fundamentals of a backend framework for JavaScript there that helped me be a web developer, right? In 2025, this simple little technology right here, right? So this was kind of the path I took. So, I went from HTML to Python to Java to Node. And to be honest, I didn't know how they all fit together. Hell, I didn't even know what an API was. I didn't know, all these different technologies. I didn't know why they mattered. I didn't know what a JSON was. I didn't know how data was passed around. All I knew was like I could kind of copy an app from a tutorial. And that was kind of the extent of my knowledge, right? So if you feel overwhelmed, like you're like, I don't know if this coding thing's for me, I can tell you, I felt imposter syndrome. Hell, I even still feel imposter syndrome at times, but that was kind of my path here, right? So you saw the path I took. Here is exactly what I would do differently. If I was starting today, I would ignore the Java. I would ignore the Python. This is me personally, by the way. There's multiple paths to getting there, but this is what I would do personally, right? I would start with HTML. This is the basic building blocks of any website you visit, right? You got to understand the elements, the box model, how different things fit together on a website, so on and so forth. You have to understand HTML. And then you have to have a basic knowledge of CSS, right? You don't have to be a style wizard. Oh, by the way, CSS stands for cascading style sheets. If you're not familiar, it's basically what colors the page, makes it come to life, right? So if you imagine HTML as a house, CSS might be the paint on the house, okay? So it might be the paint on the house, okay? And then the third thing that I would learn is JavaScript, okay? So this is what actually brings life to the house, right? This is what animates the house. This is what gives function to the house, right? So you might think of JavaScript as the appliances of the house. You might think of JavaScript as the door on the house, the windows, things that move and function and, bring people around and so on and so forth. That would be JavaScript, okay? So that is the third thing I would learn. The basic stuff that you need to learn here, how to use an API, right? So how to get, how to post. If you don't know what an API is, just look it up. It's a simple concept once you kind of wrap your head around it, all right? So you need to know how to consume as well as post information up to an API. And then beyond that, the only main thing you're lacking, right, is some knowledge of a front-end framework, all right? And if you're lucky, you can get into a job without having much experience with any kind of front-end framework, right? If they're really keen on your ability to solve problems, if they really believe in you, they're willing to teach you a little bit on the job, it would be in your best interest to at least learn a little bit, especially React. I mean, nowadays it seems like everybody's using React. If you are willing and able to, say or have the experience of like being like, hey, I built so-and-so with React. I have experience here. I know this is what you use. There's a tech stack. Here's how I could come in and immediately offer value to the business. And by the way, as a side note, right, if you're wanting to pull down, 6 figures as a developer or more, you have to understand that your job is to make the business more efficient. Your job is to make the business more money. Okay. And so you have to remember that it's like, these are not handouts. These tech salaries don't come from nowhere. It's like, you have to be valuable. And we can never lose sight of that, myself included. It's like, we can never lose sight of that. Our goal is to make the business more money. All right. So this is exactly what I would learn in the path I would learn in, right? Some HTML, some basic CSS, some JavaScript, and then just a little bit of React. You don't have to be a React master. You don't have to be a wizard, right? If you know these 3, you should start applying to jobs. You are ready, all right? You are competent, right? And while you're applying, you can brush up on your React skills. You can build basic projects. You can see how it kind of works all together, but that's it. And then barring that, I'll put this in parentheses because usually once you kind of learn tutorials and go through all these steps, like you will have picked up a little bit of version control. So I'm going to say Git down here, Git, all right? So this is version control. I'm going to assume if you've been through a bunch of tutorials, you've probably experienced a little bit of Git, but this is just how software teams work on bigger code bases together without stepping on each other's feet, without classing changes and so on and so forth, right? So learn these steps. This is the exact shortcut path that I would take if I was trying to go from zero to web developer making 6 figures remotely today. These are the exact skills that I would take, okay? That's all for today's video. As promised, I have a free bonus for you. I appreciate you watching till the end, right? There is a free training in the link I've included down below. It's going to share exactly how to break into the industry as a career switcher, as somebody, you know, that's maybe 25, 30, 35, 40, however many years old, 50 plus, it does not matter. Coding is something you want to learn. If you want to break into tech, if you want to start earning the money you want, that you deserve, click the link down below in the description. I've prepared a completely free training for you. And if you want to break into the industry, if you want my help, if you want me to hold your hand step by step and get you into this industry, go ahead and click the link down below. You can book in a call with me. We can have a conversation. We can see how we can help you out, and we'll go from there. All right. So again, I appreciate you watching this video. Stay tuned for more, and I will see you in the next video.